Veterans of the Far East, former prisoners of Japanese war camps, again mounted their protest. Turning their backs on the imperial cavalcade. It was intended to show that the issue of a formal apology and adequate compensation would not go away. But the protesters were kept outside the gates of Cardiff Castle. Emperor Akihito was himself greeted by the Prince of Wales. Both the Japanese and British governments were hoping that yesterday's speech by the Emperor, expressing his personal pain for wartime suffering, would help ease the anger of many veterans. But while many do stress reconciliation, it is clear others feel the former POWs are still owed a formal apology from the Emperor.
They say that he can't, but the Japanese government can. And I see that, I don't see why they shouldn't give it.
The way they were treated was sheer barbarism. And I give them every support, and I'll have pleasure on turning my back on this Emperor today.
But the spirit of the official day was to celebrate the massive Japanese investment in Wales. Thousands of jobs and many friendships have been created in the Principality. It is a commercial relationship of great value to both nations. This evening, the Emperor and his wife arrived back in London. No protests this time along the Mall, but the shadows of a war more than 50 years ago continue to fall over this state visit. Robert Moore, ITN, Central London.
Next on the early evening news, Ulster weapons deadlock, how they could go nearly a century ago. Our Sounds editor Lawrence McGinty reports.
This is the first picture ever taken of a quake on the sun. This time-lapse sequence shows a sunquake that dwarfs even the worst earthquake. A shockwave 2 miles high, travelling at 250,000 miles an hour. The image came from a joint NASA-European probe that's been surveying the sun for several years. What scientists found is that solar flares, licking millions of miles above the sun's surface, have a recoil effect. Like throwing a pebble into a pond, the recoil causes massive sunquakes, which travel for hundreds of thousands of miles. Even the most destructive earthquakes are totally overshadowed. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake killed hundreds. Sunquakes are 40,000 times as powerful.
To give you an idea, if you spread dynamite over the surface of the Earth, about a yard thick over all the land masses of the Earth, and then set it off all at the same time, that'd be about the same as the energy released in the flare.
Only last month, scientists revealed tornadoes had been spotted on the sun by the SOHO space probe. The sun is much more violent than scientists predicted. Lawrence McGinty, ITN.
10 years ago, they were enemies facing one another across the Iron Curtain. Today, British troops went on exercise side by side with soldiers from Poland and the Ukraine. Their mission, an elaborate attack on a mock village in Norfolk. Kevin Dunn was there.
This is the first time that troops from the Ukraine have ever exercised on British soil, and that is because in future, in places like Bosnia, our soldiers will be fighting alongside these men and not against them. Less than 10 years ago, it would have been inconceivable. Troops from Odessa, who would then have been in the Red Army, training alongside British soldiers in the middle of East Anglia. Even the mock-up village they practiced attacking had been designed to look like East Germany, which is where British paratroopers expected to fight the very men they were today sharing their skills with. But with the fall of the Iron Curtain and the end of the Cold War, the crack troops of the once mighty Warsaw Pact countries are now welcome partners with NATO. This was only an exercise, but one of huge symbolic significance, and the realization of what the government calls defence diplomacy.
There are real conflicts in the world where countries coming together can make a difference. So Cold War opponents have now become allies and partners in trying to establish a new international peace.
The men from Odessa clearly relished the experience.
We're British soldiers, we are professional and doing this job very good. It's a very good experience for our soldiers to see how the professionals do their job.
This year, British paratroops have entertained their former enemies from the Ukraine and Poland. And next year, further history will be made when, for the first time, British and Russian forces exercise together. Kevin Dunn, ITN, with Exercise Cossack Steppe.
Billions were wiped off the value of Britain's top companies today as the stock market slowed.
Edinburgh today has been highlighting the huge number of young people who suffer from the condition. One of the youngest victims was only 18 months old, and experts say those under 30 aren't getting the support they need because it's seen as an old people's problem.
An afternoon at the day centre and a game of bingo every Tuesday afternoon is fine if you're 85, but if you're 25 and you want to get back to looking after the family, paying the mortgage, paying the rent, whatever, you need something much more active to optimise your recovery.
Strokes are most commonly caused by a blood clot in an artery which cuts off oxygen to the brain. It's not clear why it happens, but young people who smoke and drink to excess are thought to be most at risk. Ben McCarthy, ITN.